Right, so we're recording. So welcome again, happy Pride. Thank you so much for those of you tuning in live on Facebook, as well as those on the Zoom chat. Remember, you can post your comments and questions during the session on either platform. I'm Rudy, and I will be co-hosting tonight's Town Hall Queer Votes Count number 3 with none other than Pride UE's PRO, Shahan. Shahan, how are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm fine, thanks.
I see you're wearing, is that a British themed?
Yeah, that's the only T-shirt I could have pulled and find
I
quickly because
guess,
I was running
well,
late.
we'll be talking about some colonial things tonight, so that's probably uh, precipitous. But what are we doing here tonight? Basically, every Wednesday we promised during the month of Pride, in collaboration with Pride UE. Um, Actually, before I go there, Shahan, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about Pride UE, your history, and why you thought it was important to collaborate not just with Pride, but on this particular event series?
So a little bit about Pride UV. Pride UV was started, I believe last year or year before by Corey and Siobhan, if I'm not mistaken, our former executives. It's Pride UV. We are basically the TLGBQIA plus community at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus. So we try to give all the persons aligned with the spectrum and our allies a place where they can come and learn and sit and just de-stress and talk. On a Thursday, we usually had meetings at on campus, and with COVID-19, we had meetings on Zoom. So it was a place where we all can just be our true selves and not have to be so careful because the stigmatism or the stigma in you need to be careful in who your friends are, etc. And be careful because you could get hurt and stuff like that. So that's a little bit about Pride U. We align ourselves with PrideTT. We have been aligned, sorry, with PrideTT for 3 years, if I am not mistaken. So it's to bring more awareness, join the bigger fight. And that's how I look at it. We join the bigger fight so that we collaborate and we all get what we want in terms of laws, legislations, safety, all those kinds of things because I honestly like what PrideTT's agenda is for this year. It's really awesome, and also to bring the trans community to the forefront as well because they have often been put on the back burner for quite a long time and have crimes and various things being committed against them, and they are fighting, but we need to bring them out more and show that transgender community, they are people too. Just because they are living their true selves, they are people as well. So that is the reason why I think we aligned with Pride TT this year and just to be part of the bigger celebration because we could have a little small lime in the corner and just 2 3 friends, but we could have a bigger line with more people, get to know everybody, get advice, everything. That's the reason why we aligned with Pride TT. And I think I will try to keep aligning with Pride TT with the future executives. That is what I am going to make aware that we still need to be aligned with Pride TT. And even if I am not on the when I'm not on the executive, I still would align myself with Pride TT because I love the work that they are doing and I want to see this. see Trinidad and Tobago on the map for the TLGBTQIA community. So that's me.
No, thank you very much. And it's always encouraging for those of us, as I keep going back to the evening when we discussed activism 20 years ago and 20 years into the future. And we all agreed that we won't use the word old anymore, we'll use more experienced. So it's always encouraging when more experienced people like us hear positive feedback from younger persons like yourself, because at the end of the day, we are doing this work for you all in particular. I mean, we do it for the entire community, but you know, those of us that have access and networks and privileges and experience and training, I've always said that we should use that to create space to facilitate others creating their own space, and to basically, to whom much is given, much is should be expected. And you know, having partners like yourself show us that we are moving in the right direction, because many years ago a group like Pride UE could not exist. Kennedy's on the call with me tonight, with us tonight, and he could bear me out on this. When I was at UE, I was ostensibly the only openly gay student on the entire campus. And I remember a girlfriend of mine at the time breaking down in front of me and some other friends because couldn't, she felt affected by the amount of homophobia that sometimes was thrown in my direction, and in some of my friends' directions, just because they were liming with me. And you know, it's a different time. I remember I hosted with the health unit there at UE. Dr. Khan, I believe was his name at the time. We hosted the first ever LGBT booth for UE orientation. And we did it in partnership with Friends for Life and MSM Free Forum magazine. And interestingly enough, many students showed a much more positive and welcoming side than those that are more vocal sometimes. So to see a group like Pride UE exist today and going strong 3 years later, I believe one of your former founding members told me that at one time you all had the largest group of persons in the campus groups. So that is very commendable.
Yeah, over 200 people came to our first ever meeting. Yeah.
You see, so we're all about facts tonight, unlike some of our politicians in society. So with that opening salvo, let me just remind everyone why we're here tonight. So we are in an election season, and it so happened that Pride 20 was happening around the same time just before the election. And we always said this year that we would take Pride to the next level, hence the branding this year of Pride 20 2.0. And part of taking Pride to the next level was creating programming that was not simply about placards, protests, parties, and parades, because those things have value, but we also needed preemptive and proactive community intervention programs that would go into the communities and help them directly. So one of the things that we launched Pride with this year was, of course, the Sasha Memorial Fund, the Sasha Fierce Memorial Fund, in collaboration with the Trans Coalition, Brandy Rodriguez and all of her members, which will actually provide funding for career development and upskilling in the trans community. And all of these online sessions were meant to better utilize technology, especially in light of COVID-19, to engage with our community. And so far, the metrics show that we're actually reaching more people this year than we did last year and the year before. So we are growing by leaps and bounds. The data is clear, and the interaction has been fantastic so far. You've got me. And the town hall sessions that are that have been happening every Wednesday and will continue to happen every Wednesday were labeled queer votes count, because too often in society, marginalized voices like ours are ignored. And interestingly, when we launched at Parliament this year, there was an MP uh, who's a member of the opposition that actually shrugged at us and gave us a very cold shoulder when we informed him that we were interested in knowing what the party stood for and whether he had anything to say about it and if he cared for our votes. Um, members of the other members of the opposition did stop and speak with us, and the same was true for the government benches. Some people ignored us, other people waved and did engage with us. So a lot is going on in the country. We, as you all know, we have been running a needs assessment survey, and we've actually crossed 150 responses, which if any of you all uh, actually execute surveys generally in the population, I would let you know that for something like this, that is a pretty good indicator. Because even in the corporate world, you can send a survey to 1,000 people and probably get 100 responses. So far less in a marginalized community like ours. And those numbers will continue to grow. And originally, we had planned to engage political parties. We sent out invitations to all of the major parties. And we started off well with the MSJ on the first Wednesday. But then other parties that had tentatively booked for last week and this week, they asked for rescheduling. Um, I won't say that they can't handle the powder, uh, but we'll see. We still have hopes that one or two will meet with us next week and the following week before the election. But having said all of that, Shahan, last week we had a very engaging conversation about politics and what we'd like to see. And I thought that tonight we could actually go into our survey a little bit and talk about what people have been submitting. And we could probably use some of those comments for our discussion, and hopefully the other people on the call will contribute. And while I pull that up though, as a young person, is this going to be your first time voting if you do vote?
No, actually gonna be my second time.
Well, even so, some people have been voting all their lives, right? But as someone who may be voting for a second time, what
Mm-hmm.
is your general take on the politics of the country and, by extension, the politicians that are giving themselves up for election?
Um, my my 2 cents, in other words, of the politics is that I find that there is like, okay, before I say this, I do not watch the news. The only time I'm informed of something big happening is if I'm on Facebook or Instagram and I see it posted by the news
So we'll get back to
feed.
that's an interesting point. So we'll get back to that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. But I find there is a lot of bickering. Like for two parties to be governing our country, I find there is a lot of unnecessary bickering and unnecessary fighting and unnecessary he said, she said, and stuff like that. That is not needed. We're here to do our job. We're here to govern the country and put the country first and make sure everyone is safe and there are jobs, there is food at reasonable prices, stuff like that. But no, you all spend a lot of time bickering and fighting and name calling and the blame game. It's really for a young person, and I will say this, I have said that I am not going to vote this year. Whether whether whoever think it's your right to do so, etc. I've often said, and I will always say this, they will say they are doing one thing now, and when you elect them into power, what they said is going straight out the window. The government is not doing anything for for me. I'm saying it plain, and I may face backlash for it, but they are not doing anything for me. I'm not saying me personally. I'm saying me as in general, because it's hard to get jobs out there, right? It's really hard to get a job out there right now. They they're not they're not um they're not helping anything. Again, the constant bickering and fighting will turn off a lot of young persons, and then when you are going on the campaign trail, yeah, that is the only time you are introducing new people. The elders need to take a step back now, and put the young persons to the forefront. If you don't want to create a whole new party to the young people, right, put it on the forefront. Don't wait for a general election to call, or something like that to call, and then you want to introduce younger people. You need to introduce them early on, so the, the, the citizens of the country know that, okay, this person is going for Pride TT's party, because we
Hey,
were
don't
in
tell them the secret yet.
I'm sorry. Okay,
I'm
sorry.
just kidding.
They're going for Pride TT's party, right? Because we are in power now, we run in the country, right? Hypothetically speaking, though, right? Take the Introduce the young people while we can. Don't just have the whoever you elect, the councillor or the MP, sitting there. Walk through with the younger generation. Walk through them, because you have youth groups, yes. I have not seen people part of the political parties youth group have one in every constituency, right? So that you bring out the young people, you introduce them, and then you start, walking around with them, meeting the people who are living in that area, so that they know, hey, okay, so this person, maybe it was John. John is with PrideTT's party, but he's a young person, so maybe we might see him in the next running for our constituency in the next general election. He is he is doing such and such with with the current MP, so that we know the young people don't just have the same people running, because at the end of the day, we have seen it. It's not going to do us any justice, right? Because Rowley quarreling, Kamala quarreling, Rowley saying Kamala going, trying to steer the US to sanction us, and back and forth they're going. Parliament done dissolve already, and they're still going at it, right? You all need to put those things aside, because I am not a political person. I down and outright say that, right? But one thing I admire, and it was this picture I saw on Facebook, when the former leader of the PNM, the late Patrick Manning, and the former leader of the UNC Basdeo Pandey, they were in front of, I think, the parliament or something like that. It was a black and white picture, so I don't know where it was. Shaking hands. They are cordial outside the parliament, because politics is one thing and life is another thing, right? I could be mistaken, but I'm sure Basdeo Pandey went to Patrick Manning's funeral, etc., as a friend, not as somebody.
They went to the same college as well, huh?
And they went to the same schools as well. So why can't you now, Mrs. Prasad Besessa running the UNC, Dr. Rowley running the PNM? Why can't you all be cordial like that? The constant bickering and fighting and arguing, that is not called for. It's just ruining a whole lot of things, and will make people don't want to vote, because they always arguing about something that is petty. Some little pettiness. Come on, you all are old adults. I'm not even going to use the term young adults. Hype in quotations, right? They're old. They are old. You all are old adults, right? What kind of example are you all setting? Like, this is what I'm saying. If you two of you all arguing, what kind of example you all setting for the younger generation who you would hope will take up your mantle? That's not going to do anything. You're just going to tell them, well, oh, this is how we do it. We argue, bicker constantly. That just not going to get us anywhere. Put
Well,
your differences aside and run the country properly.
Kristen J on Facebook is saying, Shahan, that you are preaching. You are preaching facts. So
Mm-hmm. I
what
saw it. I saw it.
what I did, I am putting in the comments box, in the chat box. While you were talking, I was taking some notes, and you touched on
Mm-hmm.
8 very critical issues that come up, uh, unfortunately, sometimes only during election time. But these are
Yeah.
things that should be discussed. So we can get into some of those.
Mm-hmm.
I see Nikhil has reminded us that most of the time the media highlights on the bickering and fighting just so that they can get views and clicks. So that's another interesting
True.
nuance to politics.
True. But if I may address that before we continue, Rudy, Nikhil, the rare times that I mean, my grandfather, he listens to the Parliament channel and stuff, and I'll be in my room, but I do hear it. I don't necessarily need to see it, but I do hear it, and I hear when they are talking, and sometimes I would walk outside and be like, "What are the two of them fighting for? What they fighting each other for?" I mean, to be honest, the both of them, they behaving, and I am 22, okay, I'm putting that out there. I am 22 years of age. The two of them behaving like they're still in primary school and they're fighting over a piece of candy because because one thief another one piece of candy. And they're going to complain to the teacher, Miss, this one take my piece of candy. That is how it looks and it seems for big people, which they shouldn't be doing.
So I have our needs assessment up, right? But
Mm-hmm.
just as a way of engaging and interacting with folks, whether, as I said, no matter which platform that you're on, what do, just out of curiosities, the campaigns have started. People
Mm-hmm.
have been out in the media, on social media, in the newspapers. People who are on the call with us tonight, if someone were to run a poll with you right now, like I'm about to, and ask you what is the main ideology or main value proposition that the major parties are running on, what answer would you give me?
I haven't paid no attention to politics since they declare elections, and I know who's going out for my area for both PNM and UNC. I have yet to see them. Not that I go down run out and be like, "Hi, how you going?" and shake your hand. No, I'm not about the fake life. But I have not seen either one of them yet. So
So it's safe to say you don't know what exactly they are
no,
running on, right?
nope, I don't know.
Guys, girls, non-binary folk, and what you all say? Kimby on Facebook says that their biggest effort is put into making each other look bad. So I guess, put another way, we could say that they're running on criticizing the others. So they're giving you
Yes.
something to vote against.
Also, Rudy, one of the comments on our Facebook Live,
Mm-hmm.
right? Somebody you have your mic on, and I'm getting a lot of feedback. Thank you very much. Yeah, as I was saying, Kristen on Facebook said, posed this question, which I find is pretty good. An important question is how are any of these government officials plan on helping out helping out the community, the TLGBTQIA plus community, especially the transgender
That's
community.
why we had asked them to come on the program,
That
because
is one of the questions.
that they do. If you all go back and look at the discussion with the MSJ representative, to be fair, she did state that the MSJ, and I'm not here to campaign for anybody, but so far that's the only party that has accepted the invitation. So
Right.
they're gonna get some licks and some kudos, but I think it's safe to say that at least on paper, even though the documentation was not updated on the website, they did say that
Mhm.
in their policies, they do believe in equity and protections for all citizens, including the trans community. But
Mhm. Mhm.
I know we can only go on what has been said sometimes in the past. Like Shahan,
True.
do you remember when the former prime minister was interviewed in London, and
Mhm.
she said that that is a matter, meaning our issues, that is something that should go for a referendum.
Yes.
So in
Yes.
other
Yes. Yes.
words, you're going to let people, especially sometimes a vocal minority, because most people don't take part in the democratic process, unfortunately. So it tends to be a vocal minority. You're going to let a vocal minority actually dictate what people's human rights are. I mean, I thought when we signed up to the UN Convention on Human Rights that the entire world more or less agreed what human rights are. I didn't know we had to go back to ask people what human rights people should get.
True. True. I agree with that.
So
Bec-
I'm going to pull up this needs assessment here, right?
Mhm.
And just for transparency, while most people identified as gay, we did have a wide cross section of bisexual, lesbian, queer, trans, pansexual. So I'm going to look through as you're talking about trans issues, for example. And people here spoke about, yes, people are concerned about gender identification. Example, being able to amend your gender marks on your government IDs and other
True.
documents. Many people are interested in violence, protection, and justice. And as we know, members of our trans community are unfortunately sometimes the more vulnerable of all of us. And I
Agreed.
remember last year, even during Pride, some of our trans sisters had to actually seek medical care and fly to Tobago for safety. So let's see. Someone says on the assessment that you can't, okay, they say having more rights and opportunities for the LGBTQI plus community will help those members in the long run, as they should be able to access proper health care without discrimination, be able to go to work, get houses, and go about their daily lives without fear of losing jobs or being discriminated against, and help our youths so they aren't bullied and can be happy being who they are. Someone else says mental health is so important but not focused on. Another person says, how can I keep my partner safe if we have no rights as a couple? And another person says, people in Trinidad and Tobago cannot be emancipated until the LGBTQI community is acknowledged and receives full, in capital letters, protection under every law that protects straight people. We are citizens who pay taxes, vote, work, hire, teach, defend the country, and provide services, including bringing children to this world. There is no, in capital letters, morality that can justify the discrimination and marginalization of my community. It is against the teaching of Christ, who said to love one another. So just in those comments alone, there's so much there to unpack.
True. And if I may jump in, the first one you said, in terms of the ID card, I think I read somewhere that one of the countries in the world, they are the community itself, the activists and such, they are pushing so that your gender is not on your ID card, which I personally agree with, right? Why have your gender on your ID card? It's and for the trans community as well, it's easier to do to like, when you transition, get your documents in order because how are you to travel, right? How are you to like if you were born, let's say you were born a man, you were brought into this world by your parents, a man or a boy, or of the male gender, right? And you transition to a female, fully transition, right? How are you to go and change your passport, to go and change your ID card, your driver's permit, your visa, for you to travel and feel safe to travel so that they don't discriminate against you because you are transgender? How are we to do that? Because that's hard.
And people don't even realize that there is still a section in the immigration law that
Mhm.
can be activated to deny the entry of homosexuals into Trinidad and Tobago. Now, the government did
That
go
needs to be
before the
amended.
Caribbean. Sorry?
That needs to be amended.
So
It
the
needs to be
government
removed.
the government did go before the Caribbean Court of Justice, if my memory serves correctly, and attest that they don't enforce the law. But a couple years ago, I'm around town long enough to remember that when Elton John was entering the country for jazz festival in
Mhm.
Tobago, there needed to be a big brouhaha and a dispensation. And I mean, that really reflects poorly on the country. It caused the world, at least the world where these things are no longer an issue, to look at us with disdain and say the Caribbean really is still a backward place. And that's the narrative that we want to change, right? We want leaders
Yes,
that represent us and demonstrate progressive ideals, and not just in paper and in talk, but in action, right?
yes. That's exactly it because you brought up when at the beginning that when we were at the parliament, the some of the MPs and the parliamentarians did, came and talked to us, waved at us, some did snub us. And this is a thing that I still think was bad. I don't know if everyone who were at the parliament that day with us saw it. And if I may point out to our viewers, the prime minister, everybody else before the prime minister came, were dropped off outside of the covered area in front of the Red House. If you have seen the newly renovated Red House, right? The prime minister passed in front of us, saw us, and told his drivers, if I may be so bold to assume so, right, to go in and drop him under the the covered area. Turn his back because he did look at us when he came out of the vehicle, right? Because the tint not that dark. You could still see through the dark tint, right? Looked at us, turned his back and walked up the step. As a prime minister of the country, right? You want us to vote for you, your party, come this election, and that is how you are treating the people, and that this is how you are treating people because you told the Tobagonians you're not going to forgive them if they don't vote for your party. Come on, what kind of thing is that? Aren't we all big people here? Like we are all big people. Why are what does the next thing the politicians behaving like some little children? They're behaving like my little baby cousins and my little nieces and nephews, and they themselves don't even behave like that.
I'm glad you raised that point though about what is said sometimes on the campaign trail, like that comment in particular, because it really shows that it's not just us that are treated in this way. Generally across the board, and people say it all
Mm-hmm.
the time, that once you give the vote, people don't represent you anymore. They don't
No, they
meet with
don't.
you. They don't care about what you have to say. And I think that's why we are reaching out this year at PrideTT across the bridges. And we are asking all marginalized groups to join with us to create this empowerment manifesto that we will present just before the election. But even that's not the end of it, right? We're going to continue this work as we go along,
Mm-hmm.
because I think one of the criticisms that is leveled at activism across the years is that while there have been initiatives being undertaken for many years, you're not seeing the change. And again,
Oh.
not just in the LGBTQ community, across all marginalized groups. I often talk about the prisoners on remand yard who are there longer than if they had served their actual sentences. And, who's standing up for them?
And some of them are innocent.
Well, they do say innocent until proven guilty, right?
Right, right, right.
So
I
it's
mean,
very unfair and unjust to hold somebody just because, yeah, they don't have their day in court.
agreed, agreed. I mean, some of them may have done the wrong thing, but some of them may have been ill convicted because another thing is take a look at our justice system. Our justice system is in a mess, right? I honestly, I'm going to put my business out there. I was going to study forensic sciences. That was the hope. But at a career fair, where we would have for secondary school students, I even choose all the subjects to do so. But to tell me I have to, at that point in time, to do forensics, one, I have to go out of Trinidad and Tobago to do that. The next thing is a police officer, when I asked, told me that I have to join the police service in order to be a forensic scientist, right? I don't understand why you have to be a do go through all the training and stuff if I'm not going to be in uniform. I'm just going to be a forensic scientist. And even so, look at our country. So many people are studying criminology in Trinidad and Tobago. UTT has a criminology program. UWE has a criminology program, right? I could only speak for those two universities because I know. Yet, we ask criminologists outside of Trinidad and Tobago who don't even know our constitution, don't even know exactly what is going on in the country as their advice. Why you don't consult the locals? That's what I come back to. You do not consult the locals. Therefore, brain drain will always happen to us. Right? People are going to go outside where they could get jobs. Right? Because I searched. So with my diploma, I could get a job in the States, I could get a job in Canada, I could get a job in the UK. Why we can't get jobs down here? Why you can't take those people that are studying very hard a fact and give them the jobs down here. Consult them, not consult an outsider criminologist. Give the Trinidadians criminologists the job and consult because they know what is going on in the country. They know what needs to change, and they know how we need to bring up our forensic system, right? Because you can't just have them where in the forensic science center. You need to give. You have so much land instead of putting up houses, the HGC houses that sometimes it just they're packing up, collecting dust and stuff. Give them a space, train forensic scientists down here. That way we have more. That way people on remand yard, we could actually find and convict people who are raping people, who are murdering people, who are doing all the wrong things. We could find them. We could actually find them and not have to pay to go outside for a DNA test. not spend 3 months, 6 months to do fingerprinting. Put the fingerprints in the system so that, okay, when you fingerprint, when you collect this print of this firearm, okay, put it there, have the software there, and within like what, 15 seconds, you know who it is. The DNA testing, do all those things. We need to learn and bring up ourselves to be able to get to that point. I get spending all the money on the body cameras and everything else is important as well. But what is also important is solving the problem as well. You can't have all those people in remand yard. You can't have overcrowded jails because the jail is overcrowded. That's why sometimes the prisoners riot, they protest, they escape, etc. Granted, they escape for the wrong reasons, but it's overcrowded. How are you? That is inhumane, right? Remand yard probably full with people. That is inhumane for the people. Yes, you're giving them 3 square meals a day. They have clothing, etc. Some have clothing, etc. Right? But you still need to give them a humane place to 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 serve out their time. It's inhumane that you have all these people there. Some of them might be innocent just because the eyewitness reports say John had blue eyes with long black hair and well built. You go and pick up Jerry while John's still out there committing the murders, but Jerry is an innocent man who just happened to have the same attributes. And because John raped this girl, you have the DNA, right? But Jerry innocent, right? But you ain't get the testing yet because why? Either one, it lost because they had to send it outside, or two, it contaminated because it take too long to send it. This is what we need to do to make this country a better place. And nobody is going to come out there and say that because no one knows. Sometimes watching too much of TV could really help you in a situation, you know.
Well, okay,
I down there outright saying that too much of TV
we
can
have
really hurt you.
we have about an hour to go, right? And we want to try and bring everybody else in. So let's
Sure.
let's go. We are very good at outlining the symptoms, all of the challenges that we face, right? And there's so many more that we all know and face on a daily basis. But let's spend a few minutes looking at the core root of all of these symptoms. So that way we can then segue into finding solutions. And I asked last week if people could envision the kind of political party that they wanted, what would that look like, right? Because that's one of the solutions. I'm sure people would agree. But let's take a moment, and you all heard all of the things that Shahan eloquently explained, and she was just touching on one or two areas, but that type of breakdown and inefficiency can be seen in almost all sectors of our society. So what do you all think causes that in the first place? What causes inequity, corruption, lack of planning, mismanagement of funds, the bickering in the politics, the lack of there must be some things that are at the foundation of why we are like that. And you guys on the call have to jump in here and tell us what your thoughts are, because we're not just doing this to listen to ourselves or to represent our own views. We want to get 500, 1,000 assessments done. So remember to fill out that needs assessment. It's on our website, it's on Facebook. And let your voice be heard, because oftentimes people are surveyed in this country, but you never get a call back. You never find out, well, what happened next. A lot of research goes into academic papers, and that's great. But on another call we had either last night or the night before, we agreed that the work that we're doing has to be made public and it has to be used to really effect change. So tell us, what are the root causes of these problems? Nikhil, when you say old values, what are you referring to for clarity? Because I could counter and say to you that some old values we should hold on to. Some new age approaches to life are kind of questionable, but that might be my generation talking. So when you say old values, what do you mean exactly? Feel free to come on. You can use your mic if you want. Anyone else? What do you all think is the root cause of these problems? What has got us to this point?
Michelle in our Facebook comments said it's questionable why we haven't truly advanced in a sector. I think that sector is that she is speaking of is probably when I was speaking about the
Oh, okay.
national security sector.
Oh, Nikhil has clarified. He says, I mean that they tend to hold value to only they tend, sorry, to only value their opinions and their own perspectives. Okay, so I kind of get a sense that when we talk about politicians, we separate them and put them in a bubble. But are those people not our own citizens who have come forward to represent us? So by your comment, are we saying that their opinions and perspectives represent the wider society? Is that why people vote for them? Is that the problem then, that the wider society has opinions and perspectives that, and let's be specific. I've heard people say that Trinidad and Tobago is a corrupt society. Perhaps that's one of the values or opinions or perspectives that you're talking about. Because if most people don't care about society, they should up paying some money to get a license or all these other things that we do. Take some stationery from the office. You know, who cares? It's just a few sheets of paper, right? It's just a box of paper clips. Because I find sometimes people, as I said, they put the politicians in a bubble, but we don't look at ourselves. We don't look at to see, well, what do we really stand for? Because if we are saying we are so different, then why are they the ones that represent us? Michelle says your views on religion ruling a country, question mark, therefore keeping the mindset from evolving. You know, Shahan, I always find that's an interesting question because religion speaks about love and equity and honesty and integrity and these kinds of things. But if
Right.
politicians, and we're speaking generally, right? But if politicians really followed the doctrines of religion, do you think that we would have all of these allegations of corruption and police brutality? And Brandy shared a story with us about a permanent secretary actually stating publicly, well, at a meeting, that by her choice, by her standards, she's not interested in helping sex workers, forgetting for
Right.
a moment that they are citizens of the country. So it's, I find it, don't you find it's a bit hypocritical or almost ironic that people talk about religion, but I wonder sometimes what God are they following?
Agreed. I agree because oftentimes I find is that for us, I might be straying from the question a little bit, but oftentimes I find for being a society where we are multicultural, multi-ethnic, right? We do have a lot of racism where we are living together. We have racism, and even in the parliament we have racism too. right? And oftentimes, also I may get backlash for this as well, by saying this, oftentimes persons vote for race, right? Persons vote because their party is not East Indian, they are of the mixed category. Some might vote for the Indian persons, the Indians might vote for the Indians, the mixed might vote for the mixed. We will have the often few who will not care about race but vote for who is actually doing the work and who's actually thinking about the betterment of the country aside from everything else. And I think that's where we all need to get to one day. Put racism aside and work together to for the betterment of the people and vote for that instead of the erase aspect of it. That is what we need to evolve to. And if we don't, then in 20 years, in 10 years, by 2030, 2040, we most likely going to be in the same place where we are now in terms of legislation, in terms of political parties, in terms of the government. It most likely will only be it have the PNM and the UNC running the town still, where I think it should have another party in the mix and another party trying to take over and bring in fresh ideas to the forefront. If we don't kick racism out, 20, 30 years, we're going to be in the same place.
Mo on Facebook says, for those who aren't on Facebook, one of the root causes, I believe, is the constant placement of square pegs in round holes. They obtain positions based on who they know without having any formal education or training in that particular field. This therefore prevents them from effecting positive change because they simply don't know how to, exclamation mark by three. I think what Mo is touching on, Shahan, is related to what you are saying, is that people, they create movements or clusters or support systems because they have an agenda that is not about the country. It is about, as you say, it might be about protecting a certain race of, well, by the way, I always wanted to make this point. I always like to make this point when we talk about the word race. Morgan Job, who passed away, Dr. Morgan Job, he always stated the fact that from a scientific point of view, there really is only one race. It's the human race. And when we talk race, we really talk about ethnicity. We really talk about culture. We really talk about origin. So that's something by itself to unpack. But as you're saying, people tend to focus on these certain agendas or groups, and they fuel the rhetoric, the bickering, like you were saying earlier, right? And then in order to support that type of leadership or that type of support mechanism, of course, as Mo said, they're not going to put the right people in the right spaces because those people may not necessarily agree with them.
True. I agree with you.
Well, really, just to correct what you were saying about
Yes.
Dr. Job and the human race. So there is a singular human genome that makes us different from the other animals on the planet. However, each race actually does have a deviance in its DNA makeup that makes us different from the other races physiologically. So it's really our differences in terms of races is I believe 1/10 of 1% of our entire DNA structure. So more than 99% of all of our DNAs are the same. It's just this very, very small amount of DNA that's different that causes us to have this sort of difference in um, the way we look. Um, Also, our susceptibility to different diseases and illnesses. So to say that it's ethnicity actually, from my experience, has to do less with your DNA and more to do with the culture or the subsections of the race that you belong to. And that sort of has to do more with a socio impact as well as how that particular race that you belong to have adapted to the environments that they live in. So, for example, um, in Rwanda, you have two major ethnic groups, but they're a single race. So, you have the Tutsis and the Hutu, and they have very small nuances in the differences in their race, but they recognize that.
So basically, what we are saying is that there are so many layers to what people see as divisions. But then why, before we get into the solutions, why do those things continue to keep us from moving forward then?
You see, no, that's a very, when you're talking about race and um, differences in race, it's a very complex discussion that comes out. There is the there's the social aspect of it. There is the economic aspect of it. Then there is a physiological aspect of it too as well. And in most cases, the most justifiable reason for example, identifying or collecting anything that has to do with your race is really from a purely physiological perspective, where, for example, if you belong to a particular race and ethnicity, it makes you more susceptible to sickle cell anemia,
Right, or
you know,
cancer.
or yes, right, or cancer. And as a matter of fact, what I learned just recently, that if you belong to that specific racial and ethnic group that is prone to develop sickle cell anemia, it makes you naturally immune to malaria. So for that specific purpose, race is really important in terms of how, as a community, a global community, we are able to address diseases and address illnesses and work together in that direction. From a social and economic perspective, there are so many other dynamics that come into play. And in the case of, once again, I'm just relating my experience, which can be very different from others, and it ranges from societies, right? The difference in races, for example, in the United States and in some parts of Latin America, plays a lot in some bureaucratic and systematic policies that are still in place that intentionally marginalize people because of the race and ethnic group that they belong to. So in the United States, there are still states that marginalize people based on their race, and there are policies that are still existing that permits people of certain races to get privilege. So, for example, some of the Ivy League universities still have not yet done away with their race policies so that they continue to give privilege to white people. Um, and because of that, you've seen the growth of things like the Negro League colleges, which have tried to strike a balance and give equal opportunities to Black men and women in the United States. And in countries like Argentina, they've socialized racism and they've refused to get rid of it. So if you are brown or Black in Argentina, people treat you very differently. And I experienced that myself. People followed me around the department stores when I was there. My friend Tamara and I went on a vacation. We were in one of the southern cities of Argentina, and a white old man grabbed onto his wife and held onto her, looking at us in fear while the two of us were walking behind him because of these systematic and social fears and discrimination that still exists. So the situation in Trinidad and Tobago is very different, though, which is why I myself might be in the losing end of an argument, but I really find it very marginal, these sort of differences that we have, and I feel that sometimes we overplay those things. But if you really want to experience real racism and discrimination, go to one of these countries and spend some time, and then you will understand how you're really different, and then you will truly understand what discrimination is. It's intentional, it's bureaucratic, it's cultural, it's everything.
So, so what I'm trying to get at then is how, so is that a symptom of, I'm trying to get to the foundational problem with our politics so that we can move to how we solve it. So are we saying that historical race relations and, for example, colonialism, etc., that is part of it then? That is part of the foundational issues?
Yes, so when the British left Trinidad and Tobago, they did the very same thing that the Dutch and the French did when they exited countries in Africa. They established regimes and they created dividing lines so that they could continue to indirectly get wealth. So they would pit races against each other, and that's how you had the Rwanda genocide. Because when the Dutch left, they actually told one group of people that they were superior to the other, and in order to play that hand, they gave the so-called superior group economic interests and social benefits and political interests. And when the British left Trinidad and Tobago, they did the very same thing. They created this unofficial division between the two major races to ensure that they had their interests in control. Because if we were ever a united people, they would lose their colonial control and then they would lose their economic interests. So in order, for example, for energy companies to continue to benefit from a country like Trinidad and Tobago that's energy rich, it's always useful to put people against each other. So then you can do these very gentle, play these gentle political games where you get one party to accuse the other party of something, and then you try to get them to connect it
Yes.
to their race, right? There's an interesting book called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman,
Yes, yes.
and he goes in depth to explain
Put
how
that in here.
the country that he's from had this strategy of manipulating developing countries to get their wealth, and one of it was to cause this racial divide and to encourage us to dislike each other and to mistrust each other. And I'm not a historian, but I really would have liked for someone who has more history knowledge. But from what I have learned, there also is a historical mistrust between East Indian communities and the communities of the African descent, because you have to remember, from their perspective, they were slaving in these fields. They got suddenly, they were faced with freedom, but there were no support systems for them when they received their freedoms. And then waves of this other group of people who don't look like you, who you don't know, suddenly turn up and replace you in the fields. So
No,
it's
yeah.
it had to be something for them that they couldn't understand, because all of a sudden you're seeing another group of people come and suddenly turning up and getting, as a matter of fact, better offers than they would have gotten, and starting to work and starting to spread. And the flow of the people was never ending. So, when and as I suppose in their own way, they probably would have had similar sentiments to what we have now with this influx of Latin Americans coming into
Right,
Trinidad and Tobago.
right.
So for those people now who express these so-called justified fears, um, think about it, when that community was here first historically, that fear would have been more than just justified. And, a community of people who were coming in was a literal threat to them. So you sort of had that historical distrust too as well, because the East Indians who were coming um, there wasn't any sort of socializing with the African community. You had to just get along how you can. So there are social differences, racial differences, language differences, cultural differences, religious differences. Um, but there still was some unity, because if you look at rural communities, the one that I grew up in, I didn't realize that I was different racially until I started going to school in the East-West corridor. But
Right.
before that, I never understood that I had to be different.
And we
You
talked
know,
about that in the discussion on bullying, for example, like learned behavior.
yeah, yeah. So anyway, I don't want to hog the entire conversation tonight, but that from my
No, but you
50-year-old experience is what I have learned.
no, but I mean, I'm not a historian either, but I studied history and for A levels and at university. And you're very right. There actually is a document. I will look for it and share it at some point. There actually is a document from the colonial parliament that outlines very clearly, as Wade is saying, that one of the objectives of sending the East Indians into the former slave colonies, because remember, they had freed the slaves and then they were still colonies, right? The
Yeah.
document actually outlines that that was a strategy, that in East Indians, the Chinese, the Syrians, they were meant to destabilize. The colonial office did not want the colonies to unite. It was not in their economic interests. And I put in the chat a link to a commission that came many years after called the Moyne Commission, which looked at these issues continued for over 100 years. And they were fueled by the colonial office. I mean, Britain has now apologized. They've since admitted to these things, right? And it's the same thing with our community. Take Jason's case as an example. Last year during Pride, the British High Commission actually apologized to us for the remnants of their colonial laws. So I hope what is coming out of the discussion is part of the solution, in that we citizens need to know our history more. We need to unpack the bullshit that was done to us by others and clean it up, because it's still, as Shahan was talking about and Wade, it's still lingering and forcing us to remain divided instead of uniting to change our leadership, because I guess that is what everybody's getting at. Because if you had the right leadership then over the last 58 years, you should have seen a better society, but yet we are, look, I mean, I listened to I wasn't going to preface the conversation, but I'm asking you all again, have you all been listening to the campaigns? Like, are you all hearing the undertones, the religious, the racial, the socioeconomic undertones of the language? It's very clear if you listen. So I don't know, other people from different parts of the country. I mean, some of us are from East, Central. Those of you in South, Trinidad, for example. What's your take on the solutions then that we can adopt as a nation to make the change we want, to see the kinds of politics that we want? I mean, I hope this isn't an example of what I think is part of the problem, Shahan. I think that oftentimes we talk a lot in closed circles, but it doesn't actually translate into a more open discussion and actual work on the ground to get the change we want.
True, true.
You see, one of the things that I think is a culture that I hope that the future generations will adopt or deviate away from, is this culture of believing that the party that you support can do no wrong, and or the party that your family supports or whoever supports can do no wrong. Every party makes mistakes, and every party does wrong, and every party has good ideas. And we have to learn to admit and recognize that. And I think one of the good initiatives that fell by the wayside with this current administration was that push to empower local government when they wanted to increase the amount of powers that local governments had, so that regionally in Trinidad and Tobago, the local government administrations would have been able to actually collect taxes and manage and spend on it. Um, and that fell by the wayside, and I thought that was a missed opportunity, because it would have been fantastic for us to actually, as communities, hold our local government systems more accountable, because that was the push to as well, where the local government representatives would have had to become more accountable to the communities that they represented. And town hall meetings and all of these things would have actually been more useful. I also don't know how many people know for a fact that when local town halls meet, so your administrative district,
Yes.
they have meetings for the public, and you are entitled to go to those meetings,
yes.
and it's your right as a citizen to raise questions. They cannot silence you. It's in the Constitution. You are supposed to be able to attend any of those meetings when they have them. And as a burgess of a region, you have that um, right, it's called your civic right, to actually raise questions and challenge the local government. But many of us don't know that, and we assume that local government authorities take all of the instructions from the central government and they implement things, and we have no control. But we really, and I think as the community, that's one of the entry points for us, because we can all come together and go to these local government bodies and start to question them and say, what are you doing for us? Because the central budget comes down to a local government anyway, a lot of it. So, if we start to tell them, why can't we use a community center? What is happening to us? Why online communities spray mosquito for us? We start to ask general questions and make the rainbow something that's, they break that vision of us, or that opinion, sorry, that they have of us as people who are fixated on bullying only. And because when we start to show them that we are serious about how they manage the communities that we live in, and we care about heterosexuals too as well, I believe then we will start to earn some sort of respect, and people will start to see value in what we represent, and then they will see that we are not afraid to challenge them.
Wait, if you don't mind me jumping in here, I think what you're saying, it's a valid point, and I think that's part of the problem. In the US, they have this thing, the saying says that goes, all politics is local. And I don't think we have unnecessarily addressed that. Our politicians and our political system has not really make the politics local to the electorate. So one of the things that we have never been able to accomplish, and I think the society is partly to blame for this, is that we have never had an election that has been issues-based. Each one of the campaigns, every year they talk about that, we run on the issues, but what exactly are the issues? I have been to several political rallies in my life, and I can tell you, they try to talk about issues and the crowd gets very bored, they zone out, they sometimes leave, but it's the pecan we like, that Woodford Street politics, that is what our country loves, and that is what we breed and enjoy. We don't know how to take important national issues and have sensible debate and discussion on those issues. Everybody has an opinion. We are not lacking in that department, but we are not actually having the type of national building discussions to really take an issue and move it forward so that it can benefit not just some but all. That's the problem, and that's partly I want to blame on the citizenry, because if we are not demanding this of our politicians that we are electing, then they are never going to do it. There's a lack of engagement that we are all too familiar with by citizens, particularly younger people, when it comes to politics. And a lot of that has to do, I think, with the fact that our politics and our politicians does not know or have never or doesn't want to empower citizens enough beyond their race and the divisions behind race to empower, to make people feel like there's something in this for me that goes beyond me, it goes beyond the individual. It should be more of the collective. I'm voting for this person, I'm supporting this candidate or this party because I believe this is going to be the best thing for my country, for everyone involved, as opposed to what isn't for me. So that's why this, on the political electoral campaign, it's all about, handouts. It's all about, vote for us and we'll give you X, Y, and Z. But why are we still thinking like that? Why are we still, operating under that belief? If it is we really want to diversify our economy, if it is we really want to lift our nation and move it forward to first world status, then we as an electorate need to stop thinking about ourselves and our own interests. And I know for some people who are facing very dire situations, that can be a tough ask, given where they are and given their current circumstances. But for the ones who are empowered, the ones who are privileged, the ones who are in the middle class or upper class or 1%, however we want to characterize it, this is the segment of the electorate who really needs to put their personal interest, put the collective interest ahead of their personal interest, if it is we are to transform this nation. That's just my 2 cents.
So just Shahan, you want to share those comments from Aisha? She did too.
Okay, so the first comment that Aisha shared is that I think even someone new I think even when someone new gets an opportunity, they become corrupted eventually because power changes people. Which I would agree with her with, because I have seen that in my own community happen in local government elections, because the local government representative for my area, he is also my neighbor, couple houses down, right? And I have known these people before he was running under the UNC, and now it's totally different. So I understand where power changes people, because it has, and I understand what she's saying as well. The other comment that she shared is that I don't see a solution arising in this era, probably with the next couple generations. If we stop pushing race in their minds, they will evolve from the tribal voting, and it will be a start. And with regards to the LGBT getting respect, we need to have more persons in the political arena who are openly gay and not afraid to stand up alone if that be the case.
Rudy, if you don't mind me interjecting here, I just wonder, I love how the discussion is going, but if I can refocus and redirect it more to the LGBTI issues, particularly let's talk about a referendum. We know this is what at least 2 parties have publicly stated on record that their position lies when it comes to speaking on these issues. And I wonder, what is it that we, the LGBTQ community, plus communities, needs to do to change that narrative? What should we be doing right now? Because I think it's one thing to say, well, it's a human rights issue and we should not be putting a vote.
That doesn't scrape past people. I'm just sorry, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, because I know I'm just saying it's one thing to say, it's a human rights issue, and we shouldn't put the a vote on the rights of the minority to the rights of the onto the majority. I think I just screwed that up, but bear with me. Um, but we need to have that discussion. We can't just tell politicians, okay, that's wrong. We know it's a scapegoat line that they're using, but what should we be doing to get politicians to move away from that direction? Because I think if it is you ask any LGBT person in this country, they don't want a referendum. Nobody wants that. So why are we allowing politicians to continue to take that talking point line on this issue, and we are not holding them accountable on it?
Can you see? And I agree with you. We need to refocus, especially as we're getting ready to sort of close off for the evening in about 40 minutes, actually. But I'm just going to say to you that I think the answer to your question is the same answer to all the other issues that people allow them to get a pass on. It's a microcosm of how we are. We think about most issues, environmental issues, traffic jam, corruption, the inefficiencies, even COVID-19, LGBTQ, women's rights. In 2020, we are still talking about the lack of protections and systems for women, far less for, children, disabled people. I personally believe, I don't want to color the conversation too much. I have an idea into my head as to what we need to do. But I think the problem is exactly what you all are getting at. And I'm glad we got here, is the people. The people need to get up and make a change. Because waiting on a politician to do it is not going to be the answer.
Because that's what I think a lot of, particularly younger gay people, don't really understand. One, they're not that engaged for whatever reason, because at the end of the day, this affects their lives and livelihoods and the future that they would like to have. I don't know if many of them seem to think that they have this lofty dream of, jumping on a plane and leaving the country. I know I can speak for myself and for you as well. I think we have that opportunity. We just have never taken it up, because we see a bigger cause here.
Buy the ticket or going with you. You didn't tell me you had a plan for me.
Waiting for you to buy the ticket.
Oh.
But but I see a lot of young people not really understanding, hey, if this thing was to really gain momentum in the parliament, and whoever is in office says, okay, y'all want this, let's put it to a referendum. Let's put it for a vote for every citizen to have a say in this. And I wonder what gay people are going to say to themselves the next morning when they get up and they jump in those taxis and maxis, or they come out of their bedrooms and they meet their family and relatives who would have voted against not just their human rights, but any sense of freedom and future that they could have. And I don't think young gay people are understanding that. And even older gay persons who continue to stay silent because I want to be private and I don't want to get involved. At the end of the day, this is an issue that's going to affect you. It's going to affect the generations ahead of us. We need to do more. We can't just wait for something to happen like what we saw in 2018. Why did it take the religious right to mobilize and to come out there before we realize, oh my God, my rights are now being, attacked. My future is now being undermined. I need to do something. It can't be that every single day that we live here and we don't have rights and basic human rights and protection, that is the attack. And I wish we could somehow figure out a way to get people, young people, old people, LGBT people, and even our allies to understand, is this the society that we want? Is this the country that we envision? Once more, we always say we copy and everything that happens elsewhere. But you know what? The world is moving, things are happening. It's one thing to say you support and you have gay relatives and family members and friends and stuff, but we need you out there on the streets with us. We need you to challenge homophobia and discrimination when you see it. You don't have to. I always tell people in my own personal advocacy, you don't need a talking stick. You don't need a stage or a microphone to go and say what is right. You simply do it when it happens, when you see injustice and equality and any measure of wrong happen in the spaces that you occupy. You be brave, you be strong, and you call it out right then and there. That is what it means to be an advocate. You don't have to see yourself on the newspaper or on the front page of the newspaper or on TV every single day to say you're an advocate. It's simply calling out wrongs where you see it. And I wish that we could really get all LGBT people to understand that, because I'm telling you, the momentum is growing. PrideTT is doing incredible work, and all of the NGOs are also doing incredible work, and the momentum is growing. And we will get to a day where this is going to be debated in Parliament. I don't know what the debate will look like, but if they say the position is referendum, I don't want to wake up and have everybody suddenly scared about, like, what are we going to do? We need to start putting things in place in the advent that does happen, and we also need to start putting things in place to prevent that from happening.
But I'm glad you raised that thought about people voting against us, because I didn't see the kind of outrage I expected from our people when the Senate, half of them abstained and the other half voted
Correct.
against us for the Domestic Violence Act. Now, I know that there's a debate on whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, but I think the principle is that nobody consulted with us. I don't think any senator on either side, I know the independent bench supported our protection, but did any senator from any side, the other two sides, did they come and ask anybody in the population what they wanted?
I don't think so. I don't think there was any consultation with LGBTI groups or interest groups on how we can be impacted or affected by this legislation.
And I think all of that is part of it. We need to write these people. We need to bombard their inbox, call them out on social media, invite them to town halls and call them in sometimes. But who then? Shahan Kennedy is putting out a call for the younger generation. Is it the younger generation alone that is going to mobilize and activate this society to get what we want? What do you want to see happen between the groups and the generations and the different interest groups?
I don't think it's only, okay, speaking with the TLGBTI community, right? With that, I don't think it's only the young folk that need to come together. I think everyone needs to come together, right? Everyone, the young. I hope Sharon not watching this, because Sharon might kill me for saying this.
She is actually.
Sharon, I am so sorry for this. We could talk about this later. But the young and the old, right?
People with more experience.
Okay, the young and the more experienced members of the community.
Look at this green.
As well as everyone, the different LGBT groups, because I mean, we can't all want the same thing, but we all bickering at the same time or holding grudges, etc. Right? Because that's not going to get us anywhere. We all need to come together, put aside everything, be big people, because we all are big people, grown adults. We all need to be adults and come together, the young and the experienced, and come up with a plan, because it can't only be on the young folk, because according to the more experience, we are still little babies still, right? We still are little babies. So we need to learn too. And the only way we can learn is from the more experienced folks out there. So that's what I think we should do. Everyone come together and we work on it together. That's the only way anything will happen, is togetherness.
Well, you are also inheriting the mistakes that we may have made and those that we inherited before us.
Mm-hmm.
The present is
it's all a learning process.
Yeah, sorry?
It's all a learning process.
Yeah.
We all aren't perfect. I think it's all a learning process, and everybody will make mistakes. No matter what you do, you will make mistakes, but it's how you learn from those mistakes try to correct it and rectify it. And even when new mistakes will arise, so it's all part of life. No, again, nobody's perfect, right? Honestly, I might get backlash for this too, but nobody really is perfect. You might be perfect for somebody, but in generally, nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes. We all have to learn, and that is the only way we're going to do it. The elders
So,
before you all would have made mistakes too, and we have to learn from all those.
so Sahan, the
Mm-hmm.
good thing about being empowered young people like you have the power of influence more than someone my age over a population of 40,000 voters who do not vote every time election comes around.
Mm-hmm.
There are 40,000 young people in Trinidad and Tobago who, when you ask them if they went out to vote, they say no because they don't know what they're voting for or who they're voting for, and they don't care to vote because they do not feel included. Now,
Right.
if there is this fear that this referendum is going to further marginalize us or concrete the fears of the Pentecostals, then how can I think the bigger discussion is not to focus on those who are going to vote against us, but focus on how can we get these 40,000 people to stand up for us? Because there are 40,000 young people who are willing to change their minds, who are willing to actually come out and vote. Over the last 14 years, I've been talking to young people and I interact with them.
Mm-hmm.
And these young people who I interact with, influential young people who represent 50 schools across the country every year. And they have the power to go back to their schools and influence a population of 300 students or 400 students and get them to take a decision.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be a young voter to make a decision. You can put pressure on your parents and ask them, are you really seriously going to stay home and not support the rights of these people? So I think what's important is for us to reach these young people like yourself. And these 40,000 citizens are more likely to pay attention to your group than us because who want to hear what this 50-year-old blue hair man telling them? As opposed to what you all are doing, because they support you, you're part of their social networks. They will listen to people who they identify with. So I think there's an opportunity here
Mm-hmm.
to reach those 40,000 people. And let us all agree to stop navel gazing because we tend to say, well, poor me, I'm afraid to do it, I don't have enough experience. When I first started doing human rights advocacy, my boss pushed me out there to talk to a crowd of 100 people, and I had no experience at all. And I couldn't tell her, no, I'm new. Sometimes baptism by fire is the way that we learn. And any activist who you speak with will tell you that in their first day of trying to do activism, in their very first engagement, it fell flat. Nobody took them on, and half of what they said was inaccurate. But if you wait until you're perfect at something to do it, you'll never get there. Because fear is an insidious thing
Mm-hmm.
that steps in and it discourages you when you know for a fact that you know something. We can back you guys up. We can give you the tools that you need or the information that you need. But definitely going forward, people like you and Kennedy and all the other younger people, including Rudy, you all need to be the one who starts to drive this movement to get university students and secondary school students to come out and start demanding things, making that demand that this has to change. And I'll finish with this. I spoke with, not directly, but as a group, spoke with the current Speaker of the House last year before.
Mm-hmm.
And she told us that most citizens do not know that if you approach your MP to represent an issue for you and the MP does not do it, you can ask any other MP. So all we need to do is find 2 or 3 MPs who will support us, and you send an endless flow that reminds the parliament that they need to talk about our rights. So you don't have to actually, you're not limited then, with your request by your geographical MP, a member of parliament has a responsibility to take a request for an item to be added for discussion in parliament, and is supposed to take it from any citizen. So if we can identify those people who we can, give us a listening ear, and even those who will not listen to us, but if we continue to send them a flood of requests, they'll get fed up sooner or later and table it. And one of the requests has to be that Trinidad and Tobago legally at the international level has a right to protect all of its citizens, and human rights are not an issue that can be resolved by having a public consultation. Human rights are an automatic entitlements to every citizen of your country, and Trinidad and Tobago, which is part of the international community, is signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and there are 30 articles that are for every human being, and it's not for heterosexuals, and it's not for people of a certain race or a certain economic level. So, and if we start there, if we start to empower everyone in the country to know that Trinidad and Tobago has a legal international obligation to deliver on these fundamental human rights articles, then it will be different, because then the government has nothing and the opposition has nothing to argue with you about and say, well, the people said so and so. Because regardless of what people say, you are part of an international community that you opted into as a government, and you cannot leave the international community, because then you will live by yourself. And a requirement for that, being part of that international community, is to accede to a fundamental document that protects all of our human rights.
True. I agree. I agree with Wade completely.
So this is a public call. We already agreed publicly that we're going to share all of our information, and we've always been open to all groups, all individuals working with us, as you yourself said at the beginning, Shahan, with Pride, for example. And I wanted to just throw in some more comments from the needs assessment, right? Somebody says, more demonstrations must be held. And in order for this to happen, people must feel safe, and the community must be more tolerant of its members and become united rather than divided. And another comment says, I really wish that LGBT advocacy would not be only around this Pride Month or period, but also be year-round. I understand the importance of Pride Month, but perhaps smaller events or activities could be planned throughout the year so that the topic and engagement remains. And I will just add and say that that's exactly what we want to do, but we need people, right?
I was just about to say that myself. I was just about to jump in right after you finish and say exactly what just came out your mouth. That's something we actually plan to do. Rudy, we are on the management team. That is part of the plan after Pride Month, and as part of the initiative for PrideTT 2.0, and to continue in the years to come. But we need persons' help. We can't just throw activities or throw different parties or festivals or events without funding. And like Rudy often says, we do not go to corporate T&T for any sort of funding. The funding we have is through fundraisers and from persons in our community or the larger region, meaning the straight people, the heterosexuals, right? To donate to us, because this Pride Month has been really hard. We have our motorcade coming up, and on the 26th of July, and we don't really have much money, as Rudy did say, in the kitty to pull from, because due to the COVID-19 restrictions, we haven't had any activities to or any parties or festivals or events physically to raise funds. Those are how we raise funds for the activities we want to have for Pride Month, like the motorcade or the parade. And we didn't have any, and the different events that we were planning to have for the rest of the year and into next year as well and the future, we honestly we can't, because we don't have money in the kitty for it. And the only way we could do that is if people contribute. I mean, a dollar goes a long way, right? A dollar could be the difference in us getting a maxi or a bus or police escort, etc., than nothing. And I'm putting it out there. If you visit PrideTT's website, there's a little pink oval contribute button in the top right hand corner. Just click on it, and a little small donation will really go a long way in helping us pull off all the activities, especially the motorcade, because we all know having police ain't cheap. They charge you a whole ton load of money, right? So we are getting positive feedback for the motorcade, but for the motorcade to pull off exactly how we want it, and for the safety of the community as well and our people, we need contributions, and I am asking you to contribute. So kindly, please, a little small something could go a long way, like I said. So kindly visit PrideTT's website and contribute, please. Thank you.
No,
So one of the other ways that you all can find money is to identify partnerships and opportunities. There are a number of international days that focus on different human rights issues. There's an international day for ending all forms of discrimination and intolerance. There's a Human Rights Day, which is the 10th of December. And there are a number of international organizations that do activities on these days. So this is an opportunity for us to come in as a broke partner and say, well, how about we support you with this? What we can do for you is that we have a network. We have a network of people who follow us. We have an outreach of X amount of numbers. We can, probably draw in 10,000 people to view a product that you have. And so you come to the table with an asset that they need, that they would probably have to spend exorbitant amount of monies on. But because, we've built a following and we have people who view things and we have a network that can push media, there's an opportunity for them to spend stuff on our agenda or to include our agenda in what they want. So maybe that's another way to do so. Sit down as a committee, make a list of those international days where we can push the gay agenda, and then approach the international community and ask them, what are you planning to do? So you write them a month ahead of time or a month and a half ahead of time and say, what are you planning to do for this day? We would like to partner because the LGBTIs, the TLGBTQI issues are part of this. And so then you get called to the table. I know for a fact that the international community in Trinidad and Tobago, they also did start up a few years ago a roundtable on TLGBTQI rights. And they're still waiting for us to reactivate that roundtable so that they could come back together. There are also international human rights agencies that focus on things like politics and voting rights and civil society rights. So it's really for the team to give yourself some homework and ask supporters to help you start to identify all of those opportunities where these international bodies that have specific funding to promote TLGBTQI rights through political advocacy, for example, they'll be willing to give you a grant or to send to give seed funding, so if it helps to print a single poster. And of course, the local community has to support too as well. But that sort of there are many opportunities if you look outside. It's just that you have to develop the skill of researching and know where to find these. And it doesn't fall from the sky on your lap, and nobody's going to suddenly realize that the TLGBTQIA community in Trinidad and Tobago needs help. We have to actually put up our white flags and say, help us, please.
Yeah. So guys, we are perilously close to the end of tonight's session. We've had some fantastic contributions on the chat, the Facebook feed, as well as from members on the panel or in the Zoom call. I don't know if anyone else who's been listening in, if you all have any closing commentary or recommendations or questions. I will say that, as I said at the beginning, for those who came on late, is that we have invited all the major parties, but this will not end after Pride, and it will not end after the elections. The committee does intend to definitely maintain our activities as we always plan to, but we haven't for different reasons in the past. But this year, we have some other things. Don't forget, we launched our artists registry, LGBTQI artist registry. We also launched a LGBTQ friendly and owned business database and skills bank. So you can register there so we can assist you in generating revenue from the community during these precarious times. And we also have an HR portal. If you're looking for a job, for example, you can upload your CV, etc. So all the links and platforms for these can be found on PrideTT.com as well as QueerTT.com. And please continue to share the needs assessment. Everyone who registered for the call, we would have your email address, and we'll be posting graphics over the next few days leading up to the motorcade. Shahan, I don't know if you want to sort of give your closing thoughts and just tell them about the motorcade on next Sunday, and maybe I can just tell them quickly. We have tomorrow a very engaging discussion, don't we?
Yes, tomorrow, Pride UE actually, we're co-hosting with PrideTT a sex and sexuality event, right? So the aim of this event is to, of course, we're gonna have panelists with answering different questions as well. The panelists, without giving away that, we have to keep a little bit of a surprise for you to come back tomorrow night at 8:20. Right, the panelists, we have experienced members of the community, we have younger folks of the community, and we also have a surprise guest. I'm using this person as a surprise guest. I don't want to give away too much. But as I was saying, the purpose of this event tomorrow night is to bring more awareness because awareness in terms of putting out there different definitions, because we have researched different definitions relating to the community. The meaning of the full acronym that the acronym that is up to date right now, different meanings of different parts of the community as well, like genderqueer, gender fluid, transgender, transitioning, etc. We also we put out a questionnaire, a sex and sexuality questionnaire. So if you visit Pride UE's Facebook page or Pride TT's Facebook page, the questionnaire is one of our posts there. The purpose of the questionnaire is to ask questions before the discussion tomorrow night, which we are noting. We are writing down these questions so we could ask our panelists. Also, we'll also be asking questions that post to us through our Facebook and Facebook Live and our Zoom. But the questions before, I will say that percent via the questionnaire will be of preference, would be given first preference in terms of answering. And we hope you come out and support us tomorrow night as well. It's going to be very informative. Also, while I'm at Pride UV's co-hosting stuff, we also have our love walk on Sunday. So do come out to the Queen's Park Savannah. We will be there from 1. We are meeting at 1 because we would like everyone to gather social distance. You will be placed in groups of 25 as per social distancing guidelines as well. So everyone, you do not have to be part of the TLGBTQI community. You can be an ally, you can be anybody, just come out. The purpose of that love walk is, in my mind, I'm saying this, only love can drive out the hate. And the way in which the world is now and the way in which how everything is going right now, we need to come together and support each other and unite as one and spread the love out there, because people always say this, and some people think it's cliche, but it's not. Only the love could drive out the amount of hate that there is in this world, and the world needs love. So that's the purpose of our love walk. Just a cool, quiet afternoon, just walking around the savannah as one community, not divided. Rudy, you're muted.
We have an entire week and a half still to go. As you heard, exciting events. We're bringing people together, coming down to the end of Pride. We're not just staying online. On Saturday, there's an excursion to Mayaro. And Wade, you want to tell them a little bit about an event you're having, I believe, on Sunday as well?
Oh yeah, on Sunday in Shogunas, there's a restaurant and bar that supports us very openly, and they're some of our bigger fans, and they on Sunday evening they're giving us this space from 5 to 10 p.m. to have an event called Sissy That Mask. So you glitz up your mask, come wearing your mask, and turn up and let's gather together and celebrate Pride. So, I mean, everybody, I'm sure, would like to come and at least have one small gathering, however it is, and listen to some music, meet people, laugh, talk, social distance, of course, keep your 6 feet or whatever you want to do. And come out and have a good time. It's a very relaxed environment, and then you can use it to also get to meet people who you don't know, and come out and just find somebody to chat with, or maybe shake your ankle and dance a little bit. I hear they installed a stripper pole, so if anybody's interested, to give it a try, try your physical skills and see how you can balance on that. That's it. So I just wanted to ask a question quickly. Are we inviting our local celebrities to join us on that motorcade? Because some of them come out and support us. You know, we have celebrity allies who come out and support us during the parade.
Let's do that then. Good idea. So we'll get a little list going tomorrow and send those invitations out by Friday over the weekend for sure.
Okay. And then maybe Pride UV, do you think you could encourage some of the younger people? I would like to see next year a Pride UTT as well.
I will try to work on that, because I was talking to Rudy actually about it. Because I think Pride UV is the only TLGBTQI community in universities. So I was thinking, seeing we on this platform one time, tell me if it's a good idea. I was thinking to start or spearhead a community that spans across all the universities. So it's not
Yeah,
just
that's
Pride
fantastic. Yeah.
UV, Pride UTT, Pride
Cause
US,
that.
Pride Costa. If USC wants to have a, we can't really approach USC because it's USC, but we could have students anonymously being part of it. I
Yeah.
would love to have something like that and spearhead it because I think they all need representation. And UTT does have some students part of the TLGBTQI community. So I
Yeah.
was thinking maybe to start that. I don't have an idea of how to do it. I do have friends in UTT still, so maybe I will try to reach out to the student guild and see if they would love if they are willing to be part of it, and then we could go from there. But that is something I would love to do, and just have one body that spans throughout the universities.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Yeah. So invite them. I know the
I
UTT
will.
campus is a very open-minded
Mm-hmm.
environment. They're
I
very
will.
diverse. Lecturers are quite open-minded too as well.
I will send. I will actually. I was talking to Rudy about that actually. So I will send that email hopefully tomorrow to the student guild and see what they say and try to reach out to other campuses as well.
Really, can PrideTT maybe guarantee support for them in terms of the whatever they need to start up, and if they would need us to turn up and do like sort of a physical presence and maybe host an activity, so that it's a good kickoff for them.
Of course, I think that's exactly what we created this platform for. We want people to leverage what we've developed and use our resources. I mean, we offered this facility for everyone who wanted to have an event, and we would certainly, Shahan, mobilize and come out and support you guys in anything that you want to do. And I think we're,
Cool.
we're all pushing for Sunday as well. I'm
Yeah.
going to try and get some rest because I want to go to everything this weekend. Um, I may not make it to the excursion, but I do plan to go to your love walk, our love walk, our community love walk, and the the sissy the mask. But I won't be competing in the competition because I um I don't want anybody to say that I won because of my position, even though I know my mask will be the sissiest of them all. But thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. Another very wholesome discussion. And I always make the point, the numbers, the public numbers, sometimes when you look at who comes onto the call, um, could be always more. But when we look at the views on the sessions, what we discuss here is traveling across the globe and across the region. Thousands of people view the videos and taking the content. So you are making a difference in your own way. And as we promised to, we make all of our sessions open to the public because we are about visibility and engagement. And people need to see that you can, as someone else said in the assessment, they need to see that you can have these spaces where people can contribute and, continue to maintain an order.
So
So
if I
Shahan,
may, before we
uh-huh.
close,
So
guys, the motorcade, there is a registration form for our motorcade. Please note that you have to register to be a part of the motorcade. That's how we are going this year. If you need transportation, please try and fill out the form as soon as possible because there are limited seats on the buses that we are providing. So you need to fill out that form and state like exactly where we will be picking you up from. There are different designated stop points that we have designated. What's redundant? Anyway, so please follow that because if you are, let's say, your friend is registered and you just happen to want to show up on the day, you will not be able to get on the bus. we are being that serious this year with the motorcade because again of funding. So you need to, if you are, even if you're thinking about it, still register, still, because you would, if you decide that morning and you didn't register, you will not be able to get on the bus. So please make every effort to register for it. It's available, I think, on PrideTT's website at
Facebook website.
pridett.com.
Yeah.
Pride UE and PrideTT's Facebook pages have it, and we will be sharing it continuously from now until the motorcade. So please make every effort to register for a motorcade.
Tomorrow is begin our 10-day countdown.
Yes.
So we started with 10 days to the launch, and now we're 10 days to the close. So you see how time really passes when you're having fun.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Guys, don't forget that we need to also invite our Latin brothers and sisters and non-binaries to our events. So could we also put stuff out in Spanish?
Actually, we spoke to Micah about that, right, Shahan? So
Yeah.
let's remind him, Micah is one of our committee members who's also the head of Pride UE, and he's able to translate. So yes, let's get that done quickly. And
Okay.
we have tried reaching out to members of the Latin immigrant community and other immigrants from the LGBTQI segment as well. So we're hoping that if we translate and push it a little bit more in those networks, we'll see more of them. So let's make a note of that here. Thanks, Wade. Right, so, all right, well, thank you again, guys. Be safe, and the recording will be up shortly. And please share and continue to support PrideTT. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Bye.